The American presidency is an illustrious office, often considered to be one of the most powerful in the world, but it hasn't always been this way. The United States was once a much smaller nation with much less centralized power given to the president. The power of the presidency has expanded a lot throughout American history, with presidents like Abraham Lincoln and FDR expanding their executive authority significantly. By examining the many powers and the evolution of the office, we can better understand the presidency and its history. The president has a lot of roles, but we can understand these roles best individually when we actually combine them and look at how they function as a whole. As the chief executive, the president decides on the direction of federal agencies such as the FBI or the Department of State. Despite being the head of the executive branch, the president is also chief legislator, which gives them significant power over Congress and how they pass laws. While the president can veto a law when it gets to their desk, they also have the power of influence and agenda setting, which is used much more frequently. The president also has considerable judicial influence, as it is their power to appoint federal judges and Supreme Court justices, which also gives them a say on what is and isn't considered constitutional. Another major power of the president is their foreign policy influence. Being chief diplomat, the president has the power to appoint other diplomats and to commit troops, which makes him by far the most powerful member of the government when it comes to foreign policy.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
The president is also head of state, which means that they represent the country internationally. This puts the presidency leagues above any other American politician when it comes to how they're perceived in other countries. The symbolic powers of the president is one of their best assets, as they're known not only in our country but around the world. It's also important to consider how the individuals who inhabited the position of the presidency have influenced it and shaped it in their own image. It's widely believed that the original powers of the president were built around George Washington's specific skill set as a military leader. The third president, Thomas Jefferson, expanded the powers of the presidency significantly with the Louisiana Purchase, which saw him use his personal wealth to buy land and expand the country, something that definitely was not in the Constitution.
If our negotiations for the purchase of New Orleans come to a happy ending, there will be no need for war.
Andrew Jackson used the veto more than any other president before him. He also expanded federal government power by challenging South Carolina's nullification of a national tariff. Even old Honest Abe suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War. He also jailed people for disloyalty and expanded the army while ignoring Congress. Lincoln's successor, Andrew Johnson, was extremely controversial and went on to be the first president ever to be impeached by the House of Representatives. While Johnson was never removed by the Senate, this limited the power of the presidency for the remainder of the 19th century. Fast forward to Theodore Roosevelt, who worked very closely with Congress to build a legislative agenda and wanted to build up the US internationally. Then we have Woodrow Wilson, who gave the presidency a lot more international power during and after the First World War. Franklin Roosevelt might have expanded the powers of the presidency more than any other individual. FDR took the bull by the horns domestically, implementing his New Deal programs, which expanded the social safety net in response to the Great Depression. After World War II, he cemented the American presidency as the world leader that Wilson and Teddy Roosevelt always wanted. In addition to everything else, he was also elected to an unprecedented 4 terms as president, which no president had ever done before or since. The presidency proceeded to get more and more powerful for the majority of the 20th century. Harry S. Truman dropped the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which put the fate of the world in the hands of the president. Dwight D. Eisenhower expanded federal bureaucracy by implementing the interstate highway system. Lyndon B. Johnson was similar to FDR in that he expanded the social safety net with Medicaid and Medicare, passed the Civil Rights Act, and expanded military power with the Vietnam War.
Doubt and debate are enlarged because the problems of Vietnam are quite complex.
Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids we killed today? We're gonna take your toys away and bring our soldiers home now.
My question is, would you consider the crimes returned in the indictments last week, those of perjury, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy, to be impeachable crimes if they did apply to you?
Well, I've also quit beating my wife.
Presidential power decreased somewhat after Watergate and President Nixon's resignation from his office.
People have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
If he hadn't resigned from his office, it's likely that Nixon would have been both impeached by the House of Representatives and actually removed by the Senate. This would have been the first and only time that this has happened in American history so far. Like I mentioned before, Andrew Johnson had already been impeached, and Bill Clinton and Donald Trump would go on to be impeached, but the actual event of a president being removed from office is something that has never happened. Nixon's successor, Gerald Ford, arguably started out with less presidential power than anyone since before Teddy Roosevelt. Even sweet old Jimmy Carter had a lot less powers as president, likely due to echoing ramifications of Watergate with Nixon. Everything would change dramatically with Ronald Reagan when he expanded the powers of the president by significantly increasing the military budget of the United States. The role of the president as commander-in-chief was suddenly more important than ever as the military budget was expanding more than ever before. This isn't talked about a lot, but Reagan also invaded the country of Grenada without congressional approval, which you're not supposed to do. After 9/11, George W. Bush significantly expanded executive power by growing the military even further and expanding intelligence gathering services. Barack Obama received the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, which placed him in a uniquely powerful position in regards to the economy. The anti-federalists who wanted to limit executive power could never have imagined how much that the power of the president would really expand in the coming centuries. The power of the American presidency is on a steep increase that shows no sign of stopping anytime soon. The president's influence is more powerful than ever, both domestically and internationally. The United States started as a small, humble nation and has grown into the largest superpower in world history over only 2.5 centuries. The roles of the president are extensive, and the powers that they have are even more so. By examining how the roles and powers of the presidency evolved, we can develop a better understanding of the office and those that we elect to serve in it.